Sup Shredders, my name is Logan aka Spiderhands, and welcome to an SP Reviews, where today we have ourselves a track from an act named Sean David titled Your Love is a Drug. And if we switch over to here, we have ourselves a track on YouTube here from Sean David MSX. This track, we're going to listen through it from start till finish, and we're going to hear what we think. Let's go. It's kind of psychedelic with those guitar arpeggios, eh?
I'm losing my mind. But when I'm with you, I'm alright. I'm going crazy inside. Going crazy inside. Because without me, you're alright.
I mean, it's just such an instant, classy entrance, isn't it? With those really punchy, satisfying drums there. The main vocals, the backings on the side doing call and response there. Instantly understanding that the story is about you feeling like someone is intoxicating you, whilst realizing that they could just walk out that door without even a care. It's crazy stuff, man. It's really good.
I'm going through withdrawals, nothing is the same. I thought it'd always be you and me, but now it's changed. Now it's changed. I prayed to God for forever, but do I place the blame on him or me? Who will it be? Why am I this way?
And that bass is so succulent.
Hold on me and throw away the key. I gave everything, every part of me.
And we can really sing.
Will I ever get it back? Guess we'll wait and see. Cause I keep coming back. 'Cause
This is like some of the freshest R&B I've heard, mixed with these thoroughly wonderful contemporary elements, but also with these woodwinds. There's interesting stop-starty synths and everything like that. Those legato, ornamental kind of melody tails with the singing parts is just great, man. It's awesome. And that bass is so thick. It's exactly what I wanted earlier, but I think it actually was better coming in a little bit later, if you know what I mean. Oh, man, it's fantastic. It's so busy, but I kind of dig it. We got some really interesting guitar sub layers there that I can hear, very subtle. There's just so much going on there with the pipes, with the different vocal runs, the repeaters, etc. The bass line, the repetition there, that main motif coming in, but being refined every time by variation across the way the individual layers are asserted. It's really good. And the keys, dude. Oh. I mean, I think it's wonderful. I think it's really well handled. Can I just, please just take a moment? Because if I'm honest, you know, at this point, not to pause so close to the end, it's one of the best tracks in the genre I think I've heard all year. without a doubt. I mean, you get the point of the song instantly, so you're just left to enjoy literally everything else that Sean David has on offer, you know? It's a unique experience in that respect. We're not going to play the ad, obviously. We'll get into the conclusion. Because this is the conclusion of my review of this track from Sean David titled, Your Love is a Drug. What do I think this track is about? I think this track is about someone who, as I think I mentioned before, and for anyone listening because the vocals are so clear in the mix, basically, it's about being like, okay, this person, I'm really into them. It's almost as if it's becoming toxic just through how much I require them in my life. Maybe I should run to the hills. It's like the love is something that makes you feel complete, and it's scary, and it's not an even relationship. And clearly there is some danger involved, maybe it's like a healthy situation. That's basically what I got from the track about the story there. And if this is something that Sean David has gone through, I really hope that they can find a better place and that they found an escape from it, you know. It's something that sadly I think a lot of people will probably be able to relate to, you know. Abusive relationships should be rarer than they are. People shouldn't have to go through that stuff, but I think that because of that, there'll be an audience for it, let alone literally anyone else who likes this kind of music, which I assume there will be again an audience for, because these are some dope tunes. I mean, the vocals were fantastic. We had splendid vocal technique with the great head and chest voice. They're very comfortable in our range there, in that mid to high area. The repeaters, kind of a bit of a warmth, kind of fuzzy tone to them, kind of metering things out in the far ranges of the stereo field there, and call and response situations were charming and very positive for the listening experience. They're kind of going backwards and forwards and having it nice and full in that respect. And I think that, you know, we didn't give the listener everything away from our own abilities. You know, we might have told the story and given the crux in the first 30 seconds, you know, without any filler, but I think we articulated ourselves further over time, showed a little bit more of our flexibility there, and ultimately I think it was pleasurable to listen to because of that. Again, we didn't give everything away. We gave enough to get the listener interested and kind of retained for the length of the journey, but then we kind of moved forward beyond that. And I think that, I think that's great. The vocals were tops. I dug it, and I can understand. I feel the emotion, some of the pain that was coming through the singing, the vocal parts made sense with the story, so there's a great connection there, as unfortunate as the reality of that occurring is. You know, like, again, people shouldn't have to go through that, but you know, moving on to like the song itself, just that's under 4 minutes, that 2 to 4 minute sweet spot, it fits in there nice and snugly. You had multiple verses and choruses, there were some interlude sections and refrains, some additional kind of riffing on the main sort of melodies there vocally, but also just what we had going on with the guitars, with like the flanger or the reverb, or like the general trippiness of the tone there, with the drums kind of teasing us that more heaviness was to come. Or those 8th or 16th note grooves on the cymbals, rolling us and offbeats on the kicks, but traditionally keeping moving forward, with the bass eventually kind of steering itself into the earth and drilling through the consciousness. It's wild, man. That bass tone was so fizzy and so divine. And we had some interesting other sort of synth patty parts, maybe some leads there. We had some interesting sort of like woodwindish kind of tones there in the middle part as well. And we even had some like other lead guitar sub-layer bits, as well as a lot of other sounds and tones and textures in a track that was very, very busy. We were not caught lacking in this track. There were no points where I was like, man, we really could have, this feels a bit too empty, you know? We never had a sense of emptiness with this track. It was constantly trying to give us new things to appreciate and enjoy. And I think that's partly because Sean David understood that you cannot take the listener's time for granted, and we did not have that happen here. It was a very classy experience, and they're clearly an experienced producer, you know, because even if your like main concept of your track sounds good, you cannot rely on that carrying the listener over for 3.5 minutes. You need to add variety and adjustment there. You either need to make the story so compelling that the person cannot turn it off, or you need to add a variety to the instruments and continue to mess with the layers of the arrangement in order to make it a more of a journey musically, or you just do both. And I think there with the story as it was, and it was a good story, even though it was sad, and you know, you could feel it in your bones, you know, it was very authentically spoken and sung. It's also just the case that the accompaniment made a lot of sense with those, the extensions, the use of extensions with the harmonies illustrated an emotional complexity to it. The effects on the guitars and some of the synth parts, as well as the authoritative bass and drum bits, illustrated a desire to break free, but an uncertainty as to how to do it, no matter how much the truth is told to us. And I think the combination of those elements there issues a sense of discord dissonance there, not knowing what to do. And I think that is basically the crux, the epitome of the situation that we're in. We simply cannot figure out, or maybe we are looking for the courage or the strength to be able to leave that situation. I think that song is like the inside of the brain. What's obviously taking the trip on being, and with the love drug, it's also about looking inside your own head and examining the thoughts and processes that not only keep you in that situation, but assessing why it is you want to stay and why it is you want to leave. And I think that in general, we smashed it. I'm really stoked with how we spoke and sung throughout this track, but also it's the fact that the theme there, with the chord choices that we had there, with the really kind of fascinating bass lines there, with the really seamless transitions between the elements there, with a relative lack of other lead elements that were more sort of like obvious than the vocals, simply because I think we wanted to have the story as the focal point. The accompaniment did not sleep. And we had a track where there was not a note out of place. I could understand how the tones, the bass lines and chord progressions mattered to the story, and things were well connected. I don't really have any complaints. Some really fresh tones, because we're talking about studio production, recording and mixing now, and the mastering. And I think, when you listen to a track like this, you really just want it to kind of tick all the boxes, because if you're happy with how it's written and how it's sung, how it's performed, how it's structured and all that, you really just need the icing on the cake to be going into the studio and getting that right. And we did. The vocals were nice and present, and the mix had crispness to them. They were very easy to understand and perceive. Nice and filled and EQ'd in the frequency spectrum there with the backing vocals on the sides there. We also had some vocal chops, some sort of synthetic vocal chops, which were fascinating. We had those. And I think that was something that was very, very welcome. We didn't really feel the need to kind of overindulge with those. We had the vocal chops occasionally on the sides there, but they're enough simply just that in case the listener wasn't satisfied with the main vocals or the side ones or anything else, they also get occasional vocal chops to kind of pierce between the stereo fields, which, by the way, the stereo field was nicely filled with all the various instruments niched within it. There were no resonant frequencies. Things were leveled well. The drums, bass, they behaved well and coupled each other well, forming as a foundation for what was going on with some of the guitar parts as well. Which floated in the intro, but when everything else came in, they just notched into the tapestry really well. The synth parts, the woodwind parts, etc., everything else. It was really good. Really well put together. I don't really have any complaints about it. I mean, there was dynamic range as well. I especially liked when the bass and the drums dropped out and we simply went back to the guitars or something like that. We had a bit of spaciness, a bit of mistiness to it, which made sense with the subject matter. Again, there's not only attention to detail in regards to like the way things are played properly or sung properly or whatever, it's also understanding that you need to add those effects changes to kind of replicate what's going on with the story so that the listener has a further sort of like command of the situation. I think when we think about it that way, you literally just have this, concept with the limiting compression where it was nice and low without pumping, where it breathed that sounded commercial grade. It was fresh. I could imagine this being on the radio. Genuinely, it sounds so dated, right? I suppose going on the radio. But that's coming from someone who grew up in the 2000s, where that was considered like a very prestigious thing. If you got you're basically you're going through major labels or something like that, I wish Sean David the best of luck. They're a great musician. I hope they put out more wonderful tunes in the future, because this is my genuine review of Sean David's Your Love is a Drug, and hopefully you enjoyed it. If you did, please do go show us some love via their various social medias and a YouTube page. Stay cool and stay safe, and please remember to support your local musicians and artists at this point in time, as either help more than ever thought of crazy stuff going on in the world, and I'll catch you in the next review. Spiderhands out.